This is the bike before the rebuild. At idle, bike is warm. Quite a bit of oil smoke's coming out of the crankcase breather ventilation tube, more than I would expect. Okay, so I've got the top end of the motor cleared off. That's the radiators come off, the carburetors, air box, and a little trick on the carburetors is to loosen the Allen heads that you can get to, and basically just go ahead and pop the carburetors right off. Some of those Allen head hose clamps are really hard to get to, but in removing it, you don't really have to loosen them all. Just go ahead and pull it right off. Then restore the rubber piece, loosen all the Allen heads now that the carburetor assembly is off, and then just snug them up when you get them back on. From here, I'm going to take the head cover off and perform the leak down test, where I check some valves and do basic inspection of the top end. But at this point, the bike is apart enough where it's not going to run again until the motor is refreshed. Alright, now I've got the head cover off and the two cams exposed. This is going to allow me to make sure that I'm at top dead center on the compression stroke. The other part you're going to need is to take the timing case cover off, and this will allow you to turn the crank over and position the valves correctly to perform the leak down. Okay, I've got cylinder 1 now at top dead center, and I know that because the camshaft lobes are facing away from each other. So if I bring my finger down, these here, and on the other side over here, and then coming down to the timing case, there's a top dead center mark right there, which aligns to an indicator mark right here on the case. So we're ready for the leak down on cylinder 1. Okay, so I've now put my leak down test tube into cylinder 1 after having removed the spark plug. I'm using a US General leak down tester. There's already some folks on YouTube that have good videos of using this particular tool, so I'm not going to go into it too much. I can make my adjustment here on the second valve to zero it a bit. We'll dial it back in. These are a little finicky. And again, I want it close to zero. I'm not too crazy about having to have it perfect. And then you go ahead and apply your gauges into your cylinder. So this is cylinder 1, and what I can see here is my leak down is right at 30%. The other thing I can do is check for the source of where the leak is. Crankcase breather hose, no leak there. Coming right out the carburetor inlet, I feel a little bit of air coming in there. But overall 30%, not too shabby. Let's go on to cylinder 2. Okay, so now I'm going to set up for cylinder 2. My factory manual says that top dead center on cylinder 2 is 180 degrees. So I'm going to spin this around 180. This is why there's a mark, this kind of H symbol on the other side. I'll line that up with the mark on the case. I'll come back up here and I'll look to see if my lobes are facing away from each other on cylinder 2, which they are. I now know I'm at top dead center on the compression stroke. I'll remove the plug, put my tube in, and we'll do the leak down on cylinder 2. I've removed my spark plug from cylinder 2. I've inserted my test hose. The other thing I want to mention about these particular test units is they're pretty sensitive to high air pressure coming in. So make sure you set your compressor down under 100 pounds. I have my regulator set to about 60 pounds right now. Anything over 100 pounds into this tool will probably break it. So again, we'll do a quick calibration on this tool. We'll get it in the ballpark of 0. It's a little finicky. I'm not too worried about exact. I've got this tube seated nicely on here. And I'll put it in. And we've got some moderate leakage in cylinder 2. Just shy of 50%. And I can hear the air escaping. So let's see if it's coming back out through the carburetor. Yeah, I feel some air pressure coming out there. Feel a little bit in the crankcase breather tube as well. That's a pretty significant leak down right there. So I know when I inspect cylinder 2, I'm probably going to find some issues there. Okay, now we just finished cylinder 2, and I'm going to jump to cylinder 4 because top dead center on the compression stroke for cylinder 4 is 180 degrees from cylinder 2. So I'll move my indicator mark back right about there. I'll come up and make sure that my valves, my cam lobes are pointing opposite each other for cylinder 4, which they are. Now I know I'm at top dead center on the compression stroke here. Now one thing I want to mention about this is I have a fitting on the end of this tube to fit the spark plug hole. And one thing you don't want to have happen is you screw this tube in for this piece to stay in the engine block as this unscrews from here. So I've got this turned in pretty tight, and then I just go finger tight when I screw this into the cylinder. And it's got an O-ring here, so it doesn't need to be very tight to get an airtight seal. So we drop it in cylinder 4, give it a few turns. I feel it hit the O-ring, and then we're good to go. I've got my compression test tool set. We throw it on cylinder 4. And cylinder 4, we're leaking at about 40%, not quite as bad as cylinder 2, worse than cylinder 1. I also hear quite a pronounced air escape. And again, I can pretty much hear it coming out of the carburetor inlet here. There you go. So quite a bit of air escaping and coming back out through the carburetor. Alright, on to cylinder number 3. Alright, I'm going to finish up with cylinder 3, another 180 degree turn, or a total of 540 degrees from where we were at top dead center on the first cylinder. Back to the second set of marks, lined up on my case, right about there. Come up, check my lobes for cylinder 3. Intake pointed out this direction, and exhaust pointed out the other direction, opposite. I know I'm at top dead center here. Alright, I'm back up on cylinder 3 to finish up. Quick mention that I normally have all these openings covered. Stick a paper towel or something in. You don't want dirt, debris, small things falling in there. I have it open so it's easier to see. Okay, we're at cylinder 3, and we've got our leak down unit calibrated. And it looks like we're right at about 30% leak down. All cylinder 3. Not as much air coming out of the carburetor this time. Looks like we're getting a different leak on cylinder 3. So it'll be quite interesting to get down further in the motor and see what's going on here. But that wraps it up. I mean, we're in the ballpark between 30 and 45 across all the cylinders. Pretty much about what I expected. Next up, we're going to drop the motor out. We'll take the top end out, and hopefully we'll get in there and inspect the cylinders to see what's going on.